Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Hello/X/. Something strange came to mind, and I have wondered if there is a good forum or a board to share it with. Some years ago, I spent a lot of my time on 4chan, and I remember the good old paranormal topics here, so I'm going to share it with you. Few days back, I came upon a story about some 10-year-old kid that has been seeing a strange figure on the edge of the forest with the body of a man, an animal skull with horns covering his face, a deer or an elk to my understanding, and black long robes that covered the entirety of the man's body. At first, I didn't think much of this, but then it came to mind that when I was around this age, I frequently dreamed of the exact same creature, with the difference that there were 6 such creatures standing in a circle around my bed. The thing is, I wasn't afraid of them. As I understand, this kid is not afraid of the creature he sees as well. Anyway, I remember those creatures talking to me, and they asked me, where do I want to die, or something like that. I said 56. Since then, I'm pretty sure I'll die at 56 years old. After the nightmare I had when I made a deal with those creatures, my neighbor's grandmother died the next day. And since then, nothing. I had but almost completely forgot about these nightmares and creatures until I heard the story about the kid. I tried doing some research with no results, except for a creepy picture that depicts it precisely. It may also be worth mentioning that as a kid, I lived in a small town completely surrounded by forests, as the kid in the story I heard about.
Hey/X/ I want to tell you about my adventures with forest spirits. Around the start of deer season 2020, I had been granted access to hunt some old semi-swampland. The area was extremely beautiful with tons of old hardwood trees and a small creek running through the middle. When I first walked through that woods, it felt magical. It actually made me feel like a kid again. When I was walking, I actually found a really nice box turtle shell and some other cool stuff. Anyways, when I started hunting in the afternoons, the woods felt strange and beautiful. After the first few hunts in the afternoon, I started to hear stuff moving around behind my deer stand. At first, I thought nothing of it, but as I kept on hunting, it would always get closer and closer. Eventually, one day of hunting while watching a corn pile, I found out what it was. It was a gray fox. It walked right up to the stand, probably 10 yards away to my right, just staring me in the eyes, unmoving, so like the spurg I am. I said, "Hello, friend." And the fox just slowly walked back into the woods where it originally came from. After that, I still saw the fox mostly near the edge of thickets, still silently observing me. I was fine with this because I figured it would be good to have some company anyway. So after a while of not seeing anything but a fawn, I decided to set up another stand. This one deep in the woods, far from the main path. I decided I would hunt this stand in the mornings to try to get the jump on a large buck I had seen in the area. My first morning hunt. For my hunt, I packed my gear in my car the night before and set my alarm for 5 a.m. It would be a 30-minute hike to get to the stand. When I pulled into the path, it was a clear night with a beautiful crest moon to the west over the horizon. I remember it being extremely quiet and still almost like a dream. I started down the path to the woods probably around 5:30-ish. The woods were beautiful at night. I didn't use a flashlight because I didn't want to frighten the deer, and plus the moonlight lightened up the path. Once I got to the woods, I stopped to listen for animals and realized just how quiet the woods were. I started my trek through the underbrush to the stand. As I neared the halfway point, I stopped to take a breather when I realized something was behind me. Not close, probably around 50 yards back, but I could still hear twigs snap and leaves crunch. I figured it was probably just an opossum or something and started back walking. I could still hear it behind me for around the next few hundred yards, so I decided to stop again and try to get a look at what was behind me. I couldn't see anything, but I still heard it probably 30 yards away, so I decided to call out "hey" just in case it was another hunter. After the season, I found out I was the only one to hunt that woods in over 20 years. I didn't get a response to my "hey," but the sound stopped, so I figure I scared whatever animal it was off. When I got to my stand, it was around 6-something and sunup was still a ways off, so I just sat there in silence waiting for morning. While I was waiting for morning, I started to notice little lights in the distance off in the woods that would disappear after I looked at them for a while. I thought they were just hallucinations from the darkness, so I ignored them. Morning came and the rest of the hunt was eventful. On my walk back, I found another box turtle shell that I was sure wasn't there before. I mean, it was right in the middle of the path. The pick is both of the turtle shells I found, with the dirty one being the one I found first and the clean one being the one I found on the trail. First contact. After my failure of a first morning hunt, I decided to go back around an hour earlier in hopes of getting in the stand before the deer awakened. The morning was much the same this time without the thing following me. I got in my stand around 5:15, give or take. I was really bored given the fact that I couldn't move, so I started to hum a song to myself. I believe it was Shenandoah by Ernie Ford, I think. Anyways, the important part is that when I was hunting, I heard something come down the path and stop right in front of my stand like 20 yards away. I stopped humming and stood still for what felt like an eternity. After around 10 minutes of silence, I started humming again in the hopes that it was gone. It was not gone. When I started humming, I saw one of those weird-ass lights in the spot where the thing stopped. Now this freaked the living crap out of me because it was like someone turned on a little blue Christmas light. I was still humming mostly as I was too frightened to stop. It stayed there, and after a while I started to notice more lights. Some green, some white, some even yellow, all slowly getting closer. The lights were probably around 3 to 4 feet off the ground. It was hard to tell because it was dark, but I kept on humming, hopeful that they would be gone by morning. They left right before sunup, and where the blue light was, there was an old deer skull sitting on a stump, pick-related. Now this scared the ever-loving hell out of me and made me think that I was about to get jumped by skinwalkers or something. So I hurried up to my car with the skull in my bag. After this event, I didn't go back hunting for around a week, mostly because I was confused with what I saw. After some research, I figured they were probably just random forest spirits who liked my music. I actually made a thread here 2 months ago asking for music for forest spirits, funny enough. Anyways, when I went back, I made sure to have some good music and was prepared for anything. When I got to my stand, I played a song, I think it was Hey Moon, and started to sing. They actually scaled back. I saw a few of them in an old oak tree to my right and some others in the edge of the clearing. I figured they either like my voice or they want to kill me and eat me, so I was quite hesitant to look at them for too long. Anyways, I did this for around a month and it was uneventful with each time I did it. I became more and more attached to the woods. I had already been picking up trash, but during this stuff I had felt compelled to load my car with trash from the woods every time before I left, often filling a grocery bag or two. Pick is some turkey feathers they left for me. The effects. After that first night, I had been having dreams of that forest. At the time, I thought nothing of it, mostly because they were dreams of me stalking deer and hunting. But after I had made contact with the spirits, I started to have strange dreams. Dreams where I was an animal in the woods, and dreams where I was flying over the forest as a bird, and even a dream where I was a fox. Either way, with this and what I had been seeing for the last few months, I figured something was off. I hadn't realized my connection with the woods until I brought my cousin with me to go squirrel hunting. It's hard to explain, but it was like I could feel the forest's feelings, if you know what I mean. When I was in the woods, it was peaceful and loving, but when my cousin entered the main path, the whole woods felt like it was worried. The best way I can explain it is that it felt like someone just entered a party unannounced and the music stopped. Anyways, I ignored this and brought my cousin to a clearing where we would wait for squirrels. I directed him to sit at the base of an old oak tree which has to be at least 100 years old, and I walked over to a tree across from it to sit. As I was waiting, all of a sudden I felt something was off when I looked over and saw my cousin carving his name into the base of the mighty oak. I unironically ran over to him, grabbed him by his shoulders and screamed, "What the hell are you doing?" Needless to say, my cousin was scared shitless. He got pissed of calling me a hippie or something and walked back to his truck, and I was left there with the tree. I covered the cut with some dirt to try to keep out the bugs so the tree wouldn't die. After that, I had come to my senses. I did not want to do that, it was instinctive. I walked back to my cousin and apologized, saying that I was just goofing around. Anyways, I went home to think about what just happened. I had acted like he was cutting off my mother's head or something. After that, I decided to take a break from the woods. I was still having the dreams of the forest, but this time they were of me chasing off people and stalking them. One night I woke up to find myself naked staring out into the woods across from my house from my opened window. So not only did I sleepwalk for the first time in my life, I also opened a window and was staring into the woods for God knows how long. After that, I decided to lock my windows every night. I often go back to woods even though it's after hunting season just to walk down those paths and be with the spirits. They don't speak, but I can feel their emotions and feelings. I often go out there at night to sing to them. They make me feel at home and loved. They have caused me to be reborn into the man I am now. I think they want me to protect the forest, to protect them from people. I have started to feel less human to the point where I only have empathy towards animals and plants. I've started to get keener vision and a better sense of smell. I don't know what will happen to me in the future, but I happily accept my fate.
Not nearly as intense, but I had what felt like a moment of intense reflection when I went into some local woods during the blue moon on Halloween. I brought my baglama saz and was just looking to wander around in the moonlight and play some songs. I tend to have a lot of intrusive thoughts about spooky stuff in the dark, and I was really leaning on my music to keep from freaking out. I came out to a clearing after some walking and took in the most beautiful moonlight I had ever seen. I sat and played a bit and watched the sun rise. There was a moment where the sun and the moon were level in each of their parts of the sky, and it created this sensation of standing outside of time. The woods were just starting to wake up, and I walked a bit more and encountered a deer. I stood across from him about 15 feet and played him a song. We just looked each other in the eyes for about 2 or 3 minutes as I played. We parted ways and I felt everything was going to be all right.
Hello/X/. I have a weird story, not very sure if it's truly paranormal or I just misinterpreted a lot of stuff and got carried away. However, I think it's worth sharing. Live in a kind of isolated village in central Italy. Not really the edge of civilization, but still. Mostly very small villages dotting a mountainous, forested area. Be 4 months ago. My dad and I are taking the dog out for a walk as usual at around 6:30 p.m. We usually go to a nearby dirt road going into the forest. It leads to the communal farms, and nobody lives there, so it's usually all for us after sunset. 2 jeeps are parked at the beginning of the road. We assume it's the usual hunters. The place is very small and we kinda know everyone. They're packing up and are all silent, which is very strange since they should be starting at this time and not leaving. We are a bit freaked out, but we keep going anyway, entering the forested area. There are usually wild animals, nothing dangerous, like hares, foxes, and the occasional boar. We carry sticks and knives, though we never really had to use them. Being 2 people and a big dog keeps the animals away. However, tonight there's no noise, not even a bird chirping. This is extremely weird. The dog is a bit off too. He looks scared and doesn't stray away from us very much. Suddenly hear a car coming from the village. Turn around to see a jeep coming towards us at something like 50 kilometers an hour in a narrow single-lane dirt road. We get to the side and the jeep passes us without really slowing down. The guy driving is my neighbor. 4 other people we don't know are with him. Also, he doesn't own a jeep. They keep at speed going to the farms. We are sincerely freaking out, but we keep going. We get outside the forested area along the road, passing around the farms and going up a tall hill. We start going up, making our way through the bushes and low vegetation. Halfway up, we hear close to 20 gunshots just on the other side of the hill, like a fully automatic assault rifle emptying a magazine kind of gunshots. It's not uncommon to hear the occasional shot from a hunting rifle, but an automatic weapon is completely out of the scope of what you could own or carry around for hunting. Also, all the village hunters were at the beginning of the road 30 minutes ago, and there's no other way there. Dad was in the military, so he knows stuff like that, and it's now starting to look extremely concerned. 5 seconds after an ear-shattering, blood-curdling scream comes from the other side of the hill. I can't really describe it. Imagine something like a mix between a pig being slaughtered with a sledgehammer and a woman screaming in absolute desperation. We stop on track and suddenly we hear something very big moving into the bushes in front of us. I caught some sort of glimpse of a shadow. It was very dark though. Instantly go to unsheath my knife, but my dad blocks my hand. He's clutching his weapon without moving. We start slowly backing down. The dog is literally between our legs. Once downhill, we start literally running at near light speed until home. Do not talk about that, but we've been shaking for weeks after. Time passes and we somewhat forgot the thing. Be yesterday night at around 8 p.m. Dad's late for work, so he asked me to take out the dog. So take out the dog on the usual dirt road, not really thinking about anything. Get into the forested area, and I immediately notice something is off. The dog's not going around doing his business, but he's very close to me. No sound in the air. I start getting really nervous, but convince myself it's just my imagination. Get out of the forested area and start going uphill. For a pure coincidence, point the flashlight into a bush 50 meters to my left. The bush instantly starts shaking like I've disturbed something in it. Turn off the light, but still catch a glimpse of something big coming out of the vegetation. Commencing to nope out of here. Without even thinking, I start to walk very fast, going back home. Not running, since I don't want to trigger any predator. Lots of wild dogs around recently, by running away. Fast pace into the forested area, while all around me I can hear noise of things moving, some of them very close. I'm scared and the dog is whimpering. Get out of the woods and into the light of the lamplight that was recently installed at the beginning of the dirt road. Noises stop. Start going slowly on the last 500 meters or so before the houses of the village begin halfway. I turned around to look back. See the shadow of something at the edge of the light. It's quadrupedal and very, very big, like a big cow. Very slender. Imagine a deer, but his body is more like a humanoid. Arched over somewhat like an angry cat. Long neck going into a large, long, pointy head. It's crawling over the road kinda like it's smelling for tracks. Brain. X stopped working. Legs instantly reach Mach 5 speed. Get home shivering. Dog got under the bed crying. I still can't process what has happened, and haven't talked about it to anybody. I've lived here for 25 years, been hunting and been around everywhere, and I've never seen something like that. There are no wild animals in this region that can even vaguely resemble the silhouette or the size of what I saw. The only thing big enough could be a cow or a horse, but that was not the case absolutely. I've seen my fair share of cows and horses. Also, I don't understand if the older episode could be connected to that of yesterday, or it was just a number of coincidences from beginning to end, and I've just misinterpreted everything and got scared of my imagination. Last, there is nothing like that in the region's folklore. No weird beasts of mystical animals or strange cryptids. In fact, there's no cryptid folklore here.
Hello/X/. I feel like I'm a little crazy, but I think there's something seriously wrong about the lands around my house. I live out in the middle of nowhere, about 20 to 30 minutes away from anything considered civilization, with a huge forest just a scant couple of yards away from my home, completely surrounding it. Sure, it's quiet and peaceful there in the day, but at night it's an entirely different story. I feel like there's been something bad in those woods for a long time. I refuse to go outside at night because I feel like something is watching me every time I stray too far from the light of the house. Inside, every door and window must be closed at night, or otherwise I can't sleep. Even then, looking outside makes me feel an overwhelming sense of dread and panic. I swear there's something out there that watches me if I stray too close to the windows at nighttime. If I go outside, I don't dare go into the woods for fear that I won't come back. There's something that lingers just on the edge of those black woods, waiting for me to turn at the wrong moment, or walk into some place unlit. Back years ago when I had to take the bus for school, I would have to get up early enough for it to still be dark outside. Every day I would walk out into the pitch black morning armed with only a dim flashlight as I made it up the long driveway leading from my house. It was like having to live my worst nightmare over and over again, really. I could feel whatever it was just a scant few feet away from me as I would walk, but I always kept my eyes on the ground where my flashlight shone and sang to myself, with the hopes that I would never see whatever it was that lingered around. Then I would wait and wait and wait a little more for the bus, barely breathing as I kept my eyes fixed up to the sky, or again to my flashlight. Sometimes I was dumb enough to look behind me, and I would see eyes about the height of a man lingering just on the edge of the woods. It was probably animals, but somehow I get the gut feeling that they really weren't. That's as close as I've ever been to whatever's out there, but even now I know it's still there. I still feel utter terror when I visit and have to go outside at night, and I still all but run back to the house. I don't feel this way anywhere else but there. I still live close to a wooded area where I am now, but it doesn't feel anywhere near as malicious as that place does. Am I just crazy? I feel like there really is something evil out there. Not even my parents go outside at night anymore, even though they don't understand why.
Hello/X/. I usually don't post a lot here, but I am stuck in lockdown and am bored to death, so I might share something I got. I've got a really weird story that happened to me a while back, but I didn't realize how weird it was back then. First up, some context. Be 18, French, Failed at life. Somehow graduated high school. My parents and I decided that I'll be taking a gap year. I get sent to my uncle. My father is originally from the Alps, a very hilly region not far from Switzerland. My uncle, father's brother, lives there all year long as a sort of mountain ranger, but French. His job is to check that the tourist hiking paths are safe. The forest is safe, and no weird stuff happens at the border. End of context. Now for the story. In mid-December, almost the ski holidays, chilling inside the cabin with my uncle. Someone comes on the radio. Apparently someone is stuck somewhere not far off from a path in our area. The rescue helicopter is busy. The area is somewhat dangerous for the helicopter anyways, and the reported location isn't very far off. Get in the pickup and start going where we are supposed to go. As I trekked a lot around the Alps and know the area quite well, I recognize the place. We get to the location. Nobody there. We split off looking for him, and we called the rescue team if we didn't in under 20 minutes. I found the man in some small cave or small rocky formation. The dude is visually fine, but for whatever reason he's aggressive to me. He sits there on the rock and feet in the snow, mumbling. Notice that the small rock formation forming a somewhat deep cave is weird as hell. I don't have the time to investigate. I called my uncle and we got the stretcher out. He's somewhat resisting, but not really. Almost like he is tetanized, still mumbling weird nonsense. My uncle gives him absinthe, a strong alcohol. He calms down. We still don't know why he is stuck here, but we decided to radio that we have him and that we are going to the hospital. I remember an old geezer in the village telling me that the place I was in was cursed. Didn't think a lot about it, but creeped out now that I think back on it. Fast forward 7 months June, hiking in the same general area. Decide to go to that weird place to rest and eat. It's 12 p.m. solar and the sun is hitting hard. Go there. The cave is indeed weird. It is probably 7 to 8 feet deep. About 2 meters deep for non-Americans. Bones inside, probably not human judging by their size. Maybe something like a fox. Weird paintings on the wall, but too old and worn out to distinguish anything clearly. Could be a humid water formation, or just the rocks being weird. Rest here for some time. Basically a big void in my memory. I only remember a few moments, but remember them with my brain all scrambled up and hurting real bad. Wake up in my bed. Apparently I came back from my hike 2 hours late, aggressive, mumbling weird nonsense and heading straight for bed. I tell my uncle I went to that weird place the hitchhiker went to a few months back. I don't think a lot of it. Back then I thought it was the sun, heat, fatigue. But at that point I am very used to all of these factors. A few months go by, back to normal life. Make the link between the two stories. Creeped out. I'm not going back to that cave. God knows what is there, but that elder was right.
I was a kid when we first moved into the house on the edge of the forest. My parents had their doubts about buying a house with a backyard bordered by forest. They had concerns about wild animals getting into our bins or hurting our dogs, and were worried one of us might go too far into the trees and get lost. But it was cheap. My dad liked the seclusion, my mum loved the house itself, and my siblings and I were excited about playing in the backyard and exploring the forest. Our first sign that something wasn't right was that our dogs were absolutely terrified of the forest. They never went into the forest for any reason. If a toy they'd been playing with found its way past the tree line, they would refuse to retrieve it. And when one of us went in, they would pace anxiously until we returned. On occasion, we'd notice the dogs staring at a spot in the forest in obvious distress, sometimes growling or barking, but we could never see anything there. My brother once carried one of the dogs into the trees to show her there was nothing scary about it, but she wriggled out of his grip and sprinted into the house in a panic. If we were in the backyard when it was getting dark, we sometimes heard noises like someone was walking through the forest, sticks crunching underfoot, branches being pushed aside. If we called out, there was no response, but if we shined a flashlight around, we would occasionally catch a glimpse for just a split second of something that we could swear looked like a person walking around in the dark. My parents quickly banned us from entering the forest at all after dark, and even during the day, we weren't allowed to go out of sight of the house. My sister's bedroom window looked out at the backyard and the forest beyond, and she remembers looking out her window one night and seeing a shadowy figure standing right at the edge of the backyard. She says there was something wrong with it, like it wasn't quite standing on the ground, and it was a little too tall to be a person, and it was sort of distorted, and she was convinced it was staring at her. She called for our dad, saying there was a man in the yard staring through her window, and when he ran outside to chase off whoever it was, she continued to watch the figure. It didn't move away, but when the light from our dad's flashlight passed over it, it suddenly just wasn't there anymore. We regularly heard knocking at the back door at night, with no one there. Our parents thought it was teenagers playing pranks and stopped bothering even opening the door until one rainy night when the knocking was persistent and agitated. My mum pointed out there might be someone needing shelter from the heavy rain outside, but when she opened the door, not only was there no one there, but there were no wet footprints on the porch. The knocking continued the whole time we lived there. It would happen several times in the span of a few weeks, then stop for months, then start up again. My parents eventually installed a security camera, and there was never anyone at the door. The camera wasn't all useless, though. About 3 years into living there, my brother started having night terrors and sleepwalking. When he went sleepwalking, he would always go out the back door and start walking towards the forest. My mum, being a light sleeper, would hear the door open and would run out to get him before he made it into the forest. After the 3rd or 4th time it happened, my brother asked to see the camera footage because he wanted to see how he looked when sleepwalking, I guess thinking it'd look funny. The footage showed him walking out onto the porch, then pausing as if listening to something and shaking his head, then reluctantly walking forward as if being pulled or forcefully guided by something. One evening my dad was in the backyard and he heard my sister calling him from the forest, seemingly in distress. Thinking she'd gone exploring in the forest and fallen over and hurt herself, he ran in and started calling to her, but quickly realized it was too dark to see her, and he couldn't pinpoint where her voice was coming from. He told her to wait where she was while he grabbed a flashlight. When he ran back into the house for the flashlight, he saw my sister inside, safe and completely unconcerned. At the time, my dad hadn't told us about hearing my sister's voice in the forest, so when I heard my mum's voice coming from the forest months later while I was outside with the dogs one evening, I didn't question it despite the fact I'd seen my mum inside recently and hadn't noticed her walk past me. My mum was calling to me, saying she'd gotten her sweater caught in some branches and needed me to come in and help her. As I walked in, the dogs started barking, alerting my dad, who saw me through the window wandering into the forest. He came outside and called me, and I said I was just helping Mum. He yelled back that Mum was inside, and I needed to run back to the house as fast as I could, which I did. After this, my parents had a fence built around the backyard and started looking for a new place. In the time between the fence being built and us moving out, it got way worse. We'd hear knocking at the door more regularly, as well as tapping on the windows, as if someone was walking the perimeter of the house and trying every window. We would often hear scratching and scraping sounds on the fence and voices beyond it. My brother's night terrors got more frequent, and one night, my mum didn't hear the door open when he went sleepwalking, and he woke up standing at the fence, staring into the forest with the dogs barking at him. The last morning we spent there, less than 4 years after we moved in, we woke up to find the back door fully open, and the security camera footage showed it slowly swinging open on its own. Since moving out, my brother's sleepwalking has stopped, though he still gets night terrors, and he suffers from pretty severe anxiety. A few nights ago, he called me out of the blue, and after a bit of small talk, he asked me if I think the door being opened that final night means whatever was out there finally got in. He was trying to make light of it, saying he was getting into the spirit of Halloween, joking about how maybe we should all get exorcised, just in case something latched onto us all those years ago. But I think he's deeply bothered by everything that happened. I still get nervous around dark, wooded areas. I don't know what I think was out there, in the forest behind our house at night, but I get the feeling that, given the chance, it would have swallowed us whole.
I've lived in West Virginia all my life and just recently had to move to New York for work. I miss how free I was back in West Virginia. plan on moving back ASAP. One thing I learned is that people in the country are way happier than city folk. City folk are very angry and mentally ill compared to rural folk. Growing up in West Virginia as a kid, I'd often spend all day roaming around in the woods. Walk just 10 meters or so into our backyard, and you'd be in a never-ending forest. I would walk and walk until I could cross creeks and ponds in the middle of the forest. I found little brick huts with windows and doors, but nothing inside. I'd find what looked like occult gathering areas, with the tree line cleared out to create a perfect circle, with little stumps placed in a circle and a weird sculpture in the center. I'd find things hanging on trees. I'd find tree houses in the middle of the forest, etc. The scariest things I came across were old abandoned buildings with occult writings scribbled all over the walls. While I was checking that building out, and a turkey came out of nowhere and started following me. Super weird. A lot of old abandoned buildings like that all throughout West Virginia in the country. Pretty sure there's a group of cultists in West Virginia. The most real thing I experienced in West Virginia was when I saw a tall, pale white hominid creature running through a field. I've told the story here a couple times, but basically, I was roaming around the forest with some friends and spotted a tall, pale white bipedal that was running insanely fast. I know it was real because it was moving the ground around it as it ran, and eventually grabbed a tree branch, which caused leaves to fall off the tree. I've never hallucinated anything like that in my entire life. It terrified me and gave me a massive adrenaline dump. That entire area was pretty weird. There was a road near there that led endlessly into the forest. It wasn't a service road either.
There are these strange cairn kind of things in my forest. They're locally known as Indian graves, but the truth is no one knows what they are, only that they've been there forever. Pick-related is one of them. My friend was camping in his trailer on our land a few yards away from my own trailer. He told me that night he heard the door open and felt someone come over and sit down on his bed. He thought it was me and that he was going to get lucky and switch the light on. No one was there. I heard that there was some snake church down in the southern part of the state where a toddler got bitten by a rattlesnake and died. The church was scared of the law coming in, so they buried him behind the church. My grandma lives near us. She has an old barn, but she's in bad shape and rarely goes out there. One night she looked out the window and noticed that the light was on. She went out to look and said that there were animal remains scattered everywhere, floor to ceiling, completely dissected, raccoons and opossums mostly. She said it was like they threw them at the wall and they exploded. She called the cops and they poked around, but they didn't find anything. My farm is built over an old mine. This mine had a disaster of its own and several men were entombed down there. Every year the pond drains down and my father used to tell me, it's raining down on them ghosts' heads.
I got one, but it's short and anticlimactic. Here it is anyway. Be me. Go camping with some friends. Set up next to a lake in a heavily forested mountain range. The first couple days and things are normal. We hike and climb the mountains and map out the area around the lake pretty well. Barely ever see anyone on the trails. Definitely the only group camping around the lake. On the fourth night, we're all sitting on the edge of the lake near the campsite for a while. My drunk friend took a night swim while the rest of us sat on shore and looked at the stars. See a small, flickering light coming from a cove in the lake. We joke about how it's probably some neurotic boomer doing 1 a.m. pike fishing. Light slowly getting brighter. Oh great, he's coming our way. Probably gonna yell at us for being too loud and scaring the fish. Drunk friend still splashing around in the water. The light is still getting closer, but no sound of paddling or outline of the boat we can make out. I ran up to my tent to grab my binos. By the time I get back, the lake is pitch black again. Everyone brushes off my concerns about aliens, saying it's just someone fishing, and our eyes probably played tricks on us, looking like he was closer than he was. Continue to sit there for a minute and see the light again, but this time it's on the trail on the mountain next to the lake. Looks like the same flickery headlight type lamp. Light gets way brighter. They made a fire now. Grab my binos and look at the campfire. See what I can only describe as an SUV-sized vehicle glowing bright somewhere between neon green and neon orange. I can see it moving slightly, glowing oval outline moving through the brush. Definitely an object and not a flashlight or fire. Make my friends look for themselves. All agree we don't know WTF it is. Dub it the glowing SUV as we continue to sit there at the stars. Lights eventually go out. Normie friends brush it off and we call go to bed. Nothing else happens.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.